Welcome back to your practice. Today we will be moving through some pretty basic postures that we often do during my class when you come in person. So I hope you enjoy it. And find a place on your mat where you can be still, settle in, close your eyes, and just start to tune into your breath, how it's moving the body, how it feels as it moves in and out through the nose. And what can you hear? What can you feel? What you can still see behind your closed eyelids. And bring your awareness to your heart and take this time to set an intention for your practice today. A word or a phrase. Maybe you want to dedicate your practice to someone. Usually what comes to you quickly is what you need. So once you find that, seal it in and then make your way onto your back. And then once you're on your back, take your arms out into a T with the palms down. Place a bend into your knees and step your feet to the outside edges of your mat. Lift and spread your toes. Spread the fingers wide and keep the belly pulled in and up. As you exhale, take the knees to the right and take your gaze to the left. As you inhale, bring everything back through the center. And as you exhale next, take the knees to the left and take your gaze to the right. Inhale back through center. And just follow this rhythm, this pattern that you're setting for yourself. One breath, one movement. It will set your pace throughout your practice. So be aware of how this feels. And when you have your knees to the right next, pause there. Pick up your right foot and place it on your left thigh. And then take your left arm up and overhead, resting on the floor. And just notice here that you may feel a little bit more opening in the hips. You may feel the breath a little bit more than when you were still. And when you're ready, come back through the center and take your knees to the left, take your gaze to the right. Pick up your left foot and place it on your right thigh. And take your right arm up and overhead, resting on the floor. And just come back to noticing breath, noticing sensation, maybe noticing the difference between the two sides. Come back to your intention if you start to get distracted. And when you're ready, bring everything back through the center. Lift the feet so that the knees track over the hips. Feet are straight out from the knees. Place your hands at the back of your thighs, just underneath your knees. And as you inhale, straighten the legs, sending the heels toward the ceiling. And as you exhale, place a bend back into the knees. And move like this with your breath. So as you move, keep a little bit of opposition between the hands and the legs. So as you pull gently back with your hands, push gently forward with your legs. And each time your legs are straight, just make a point of taking the toes up and back and the heels up toward the ceiling. And the next time the legs are straight, pause there. Just get a little bit of movement in the ankles by pointing and flexing the feet, maybe making little circles. And when you're ready, you can take your feet back down just for a moment and then pick them back up. Knees tracking over the hips, feet straight out from the knees. And take your arms straight forward. As you inhale, push your right foot forward and down as you take your left arm up and back. Come back through center on your exhale. On your inhale, take the right leg to the right, and the left arm to the left. Come back through center, and with your next inhale, take your left leg forward and your right arm up and back. Exhale back to the center. Bring the arms and legs together and push both feet forward and take both arms back. Exhale back through center. Inhale, right leg forward and down, left arm up and back. Exhale back through center. Inhale, right leg right, left arm left. Inhale back through center. Inhale, left leg forward, right arm back. Exhale back through center. Inhale, left leg left, right arm right. Exhale back through center. Both arms together, legs together. Arms go up and back, legs go forward and down. So move like this with your breath. This is a little bit of a different pattern. So notice what it feels like to have to really think about what you're doing as you move. Try to move really slowly. And if you kind of lose track of that pattern, just look at the screen and you can see what I'm doing. It's a challenge in keeping the right and left sides of your body moving at the same time and keeping the other limbs still. So it's a bit of a challenge, but I think it's good to exercise your brain while you're exercising your body. And again, play around with the pace. So slow down your breath and that will slow down your movements, or vice versa. If you slow down your movements, slow down your breath. And through this, just remember to keep everything active and stable. Toes lifted and spread, fingers spread wide, belly pulled in, tailbone pressed down, lower back rib cage pressed down. A little bit of space at the low back. And notice as you move through this, that because you need to think about what you're doing as you move, you really have no space in your mind for worry or thinking about anything else except what you're doing right now. And again, play with your pace, really slow things down. It's interesting to see how the sensation changes as you move really slowly. And when you're ready, you can come back through center, take your feet down, and then pick up your knees and hug them into your chest with your arms. Just kind of rock that out for a moment. And when you're ready, set up for bridge with your feet about hips distance apart, arms way in by your sides. Bend the elbows so the fingertips are pointing toward the ceiling. Pull the belly in. And as you inhale, take the hips up toward the ceiling as you push down with the upper arms and your feet. And as you exhale, take your hips back down to the floor. Move with your breath. Focus on sensation. Lifting with the hips, pressing down with the arms and the feet. And each time you lift the hips, just make a point of taking the knees a little bit more forward and act like you're trying to drag your feet back towards your hips, even though you're not really moving them. It's just the energetic movement. Pause the next time the hips are lifted. If you find over time that the hips are starting to sink back down to the floor, just make a point of lifting back up, pressing down a little bit more with your arms, pressing down a little bit more with your feet. Everything's still engaged, toes lifted and spread, fingers spread wide. And bring the hips back down and stay in that same position, but start to walk your feet forward toward the end of your mat. And you'll come to a point where you can't really keep your toes down. When you get to that point, just lift the toes up and you'll be resting the weight of your legs on your heels. Stay like this with everything still engaged, and as you inhale, take the hips up toward the ceiling, and as you exhale, take them back down. And you'll notice an increase in effort here. Move slowly. And just notice that difference with no judgment or thinking. And just notice. And when the hips are lifted next, pause. And again, notice that difference, how it feels to pause in this place of quite a bit more effort. And then when you are ready, you can take your hips back down to the floor. Lengthen out your legs, take your arms overhead. And just take a moment for a full body stretch here. And then place a bend back into the knees, just so that you can lift yourself back up to sitting, and then transition over to your hands and knees. And then take the knees out wide and the big toes together. Bring your forehead down to the floor. Lengthen your arms out in front of you. Really reach the fingertips forward so that your elbows come up off of your mat. Just take a moment here, breathing deeply into the belly. And then pick up your head so that you can see your hands. And walk the hands over to your right so that they're both off of your mat. The arms are still about shoulder distance apart. Bring the forehead back down if possible, otherwise rest your head on the top of your left arm. And then make a point of taking the left shoulder down a little bit closer to the floor and lifting the right one up a little bit more. Stay here and focus on your breath. And then eventually come back through center and do the same thing on the other side. So take the arms over to the left, and this time make a point of taking the right shoulder down and the left one up slightly. And you'll notice a difference in sensation on the side body here. Just stay focused on that, or focus on your breath. Just stay in this moment. When you're ready, you can come back through the center. Bring yourself back up to hands and knees. Position your hands under your shoulders and your knees under your hips. Feet are straight out from your knees. Tuck the toes under. Pull the belly in. And as you exhale, lift the knees to just hover above the mat. Stay here for a breath or two, and with your exhale, send the hips up and back to downward facing dog. And once you're there, keep the knees bent slightly, tailbone lifted slightly. Really press yourself away from your mat and get a little bit of movement in the legs here. Taking one heel down as you bend the opposite knee. And eventually bring that to stillness. Pause again here in downward facing dog just to feel everything. And lift yourself way up onto your toes. Bring your shoulders forward and your knees down. Untuck the toes, send the hips back to the heels. Come back into child's pose, and then right back up on your inhale to hands and knees. Exhale, tuck the toes, lift the knees, hover above the floor. As you exhale next, take the hips up and back to downward facing dog. Come way up onto your toes, bring the knees down. Hover above the floor again if you wish. Bring the knees all the way down, untuck the toes, send the hips back to the heels. Right back up on your inhale. And just move through this earth salutation, another familiar sequence. And just feel free to pause wherever you would like to pause. So if downward facing dog feels really good in your body today, stay there for a little longer. If you want a little bit more core work, you can keep the knees hovering on your way up and on your way down. And you can hold there for as long as you'd like, keeping the core engaged, belly pulled in and everything braced in the front body. So you can decide how to approach this earth salutation, where to pause, where to move. You choose the pace by really focusing on your breath. And the next time you are in downward facing dog again, bring that movement back into the legs, pressing one heel down as you bend the knee of the opposite leg. And then start to walk the hands and feet together. You'll end up toward the front end of your mat in a forward fold. So just pause here, grab a hold of opposite elbows with your hands. Just let your head hang heavy, keep the knees bent a little bit, lift the tailbone up a little bit. You might feel that sensation in your hamstring as you lift the tailbone up. And then make sure the feet are hips distance apart. Set your hips down and back. Bring the shoulder blades together on your back. And as you inhale next, bring the torso up, arms to frame your ears, fingers spread wide. And as you exhale, come to standing, bring your arms down by your sides and your hands to your heart. As you inhale, take your arms up and over your head. Bring the palms together, lateral bend to the right, come back through center, lateral bend to the left, come back through center, bring the palms back down to the heart, hinge at your hips into the forward fold. Let your head hang heavy for a moment and then send the hips down and back. Shoulder blades together. Inhale up through chair, arms framing your ears. Knees over ankles. As you exhale, come to standing, arms down by your sides and your hands to your heart. Inhale, arms up and overhead. Lateral bend to the right. Center. Lateral bend to the left. Center. Palms to heart. And this time take your hands to your hips. Turn to the long edge of your mat. Keep your hands on your hips. Step your feet wide apart. Toes lifted and spread. Belly pulled in. And as you exhale, bring your elbows back a little bit and hinge at your hips into a half forward fold. Each exhale, come into that half forward fold. Each inhale, come back up to standing. Move with your breath. The next time you're in that half forward fold, come all the way down, Let your head hang heavy for a moment here. And then start to take your fingertips forward as you place more weight into the heels of your feet. So a lot of weight in your heels, less weight in the toes. Keep taking the fingertips forward, and you're almost using your fingertips to keep yourself from falling back. You probably won't really fall back, but you'll just have that feeling of balance between your fingertips and your heels. Knees are going to be bent quite a bit. And just stay here and notice sensation. As you're here over time, it's quite a bit of effort. If you ever feel shaky or you need to come out before my words call you out, feel free to back off and come to a place of rest. And start to walk the hands back towards your feet, and then walk your hands over to the front end of your mat again. And bring the feet together there. And you're back in a forward fold. Let your head hang heavy. Take your hands down so that you can step one foot back at a time, back into downward facing dog. Come up on the toes, bring the knees down. Untuck the toes, send the hips back to child's pose. And rest in child's pose with the knees out wide if that feels best to you. And then take your arms down by your sides so your hands will be resting down by your feet. Since you've had your arms up and overhead quite a bit, this might feel good in the body. Breathe deeply into the belly. And then come back up to your hands and your knees. Tuck your toes under. Once again, send the hips up and back to downward facing dog. Pause here to feel everything engaged. Toes lifted and spread. Tailbone lifted up a little bit. Really press yourself away from the mat. And then step your feet back a little bit more toward the back end of your mat. Lift yourself up onto your toes. Move the shoulders forward so that you come into plank. And then as you exhale, take the hips up and back to downward facing dog. When you inhale next, take your shoulders forward and come into plank. And just move through this plank wave. Each exhale, come into downward facing dog. Each inhale, come into plank. Pause wherever you would like to pause. And if you are pausing in plank, just be sure that your front body is braced, your belly's pulled in, and you're really pressing yourself away from the mat still, bringing your shoulder blades apart this time. So really pushing your shoulder blades apart as much as you can here, keeping the back body straight. And then come down all the way to the belly with the elbows in. You can take your knees down if that works best for you, or just lower yourself all the way down to the floor on the belly. And then take your arms down by your side. Your forehead is down on your mat. Your palms are down. Bring the legs together like they're one leg. And as you inhale, use the inhale to lift your head and shoulders up off of the ground. And as you exhale, take the head and shoulders back down. So each inhale, lift the head and shoulders. Each exhale, lower. And the next time you have lifted, pause there. Keep everything pressed into the floor, the front body pressed into the floor, and see what it feels like to lift the arms and float them above the floor and maybe even the legs. See what that feels like in the body. Keep the breath moving in and out through the nose. And as you exhale next, take everything back down. And then lift yourself up onto your forearms with your elbows under your shoulders, fingertips straight forward. And start to get a little bit of movement in the neck. So look over to your right and then take your nose up toward the ceiling and act like you're trying to touch your nose to the ceiling as you move your head over to the left. Once you get to the left, bring it back up and over to the right. And then eventually pause in the center, take the chin down a little bit, and then go from right to left, acting like you're trying to trace your collarbone with your chin. And just move slowly side to side. And then come up to your hands and your knees. And then make your way to your back. And take your arms up and over your head. Take a full body stretch here. And move your left leg over to the left. Bring your right leg to meet it. Cross your right ankle over the left if that's possible, and then pick up your head and shoulders and kind of step the upper body off to the left as well. Keep the palms together, fingers clasped. Just notice the sensation in the side body. Notice the movement of the breath, how it feels going in and out of the nose, how it feels as it moves the body when you're in this lateral bend, lateral stretch. And then come back through the center, take your right leg to the right, your left leg to meet it, cross the left ankle over your right, and then step the upper body off to the right as well. Keep the hands clasped together. In this place, you can also take your right hand to your left wrist. You might get a little bit more sensation on the left side body there. And come back to noticing differences here. If you feel like the left hip is lifting up, engage the right glute and you'll press it back down to the floor. And then eventually make your way back to the center. Bring your arms back out into a T. Palms down. Cross your right leg over your left with the thighs touching. Brace the front body, and as you exhale, start to very slowly take the knees over to your left. Once you feel that place of support, take your gaze to the right and pause. So legs are supported by the floor. And you should feel this twist, feel the breath moving the body a little bit more in the twist. Stay with your sensation. Maybe start to come back to your intention. And embrace the front body. Bring the knees back through center. Uncross the legs and then switch. So we'll take the left thigh over the right. Brace the front body and very slowly take both legs over to your right. Once you feel the support of the floor underneath your legs, take your gaze to your left. And again, come back to noticing the difference that you feel. Maybe you feel a difference, maybe you don't. Just Notice, stay with the present moment. So come back to noticing how you feel now compared to the beginning of your practice today. And then brace the front body to bring the legs back up through center, uncross the legs. Lengthen your legs out long. Take your arms up and over your head for a final full body stretch here. Notice how you feel. And take the arms back down. Take the feet apart slightly and just let them kind of fall to the sides. No engagement here. Release everything. Relax everything. Maybe have your palms facing up. Let the fingers curl in naturally. And you can stay here as long as you'd like. I recommend at least 4 or 5 minutes. And it is the light in me that looks out and sees that same light within you. Namaste.